That's a great question. Well, there's some specific business roles that the Secretary of State has, as I tried to address in the questionnaire. I mean, they're not comprehensive by any means, but LLCs are filed with the Secretary of State, for example, which ends up being the way most businesses are formed these days. So clearly that's one obligation that needs to be done right and needs to be searchable and consumer friendly. Article 9, non-real estate foreclosures are handled by the Secretary of State, not foreclosures, excuse me, but interests. If you loan property, if you loan money against a non-real estate secured asset, it becomes filed with the Secretary of State. So a lot of businesses are involved in that. But I think the better answer to your question is the big picture. I mean, what can the Secretary of State do to foster a more healthy business climate in Arizona? And I think there are a lot of things that fit into that category. For one thing, we're unfortunately have a reputation around the country, and that affects business of being sort of a partisan playground, that a lot of issues come out of our legislature and are espoused by state officials that frankly don't do us a lot of good, but make a political point. And I think ultimately that has caused a great deal of harm to the state. Example, Secretary Bennett spent a great deal of time in Hawaii researching the president's birth certificate. Not entirely sure why that was his business. I know he could make a case that perhaps putting him on the ballot he needed to do that. But it was clearly grandstanding. It was highly partisan. People in Hawaii thought we were pretty silly because they spent a good deal of time in various conferences there talking to their state officials. That did not help business in Arizona in the general rule. So I think, Secretary of State needs to be a person who calls balls and strikes completely fairly, doesn't get involved in partisan games, doesn't get involved in partisan campaigns, frankly. And Secretary Bennett also was the state chairman for Mitt Romney. No disrespect to Governor Romney, but it was a mistake and shouldn't have happened. So if we're going to make business thrive, I think we've got to have a reputation that our government is above reproach.